On this episode, we feature award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author of Stand Up, Speak Up, a Bible for entrepreneurs to release imposter syndrome, stop hating, and find courage and confidence to build an empire that better shapes the world. Also, author of Build Your Empire from the Inside Out, I'd like to welcome Samantha J. Brunskill to the show. How you doing, Samantha?
I'm doing really, really good. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. We've got I was hoping my internet's going to be all fine because we've got lots of floods happening at the moment in Australia.
Gotcha. That's crazy. Yeah, you're joining us all the way from Australia. I really appreciate you taking time out to do this tonight for me. And so how are things over in Australia? Because I know, at least from the people that I hear from over here in the States, it seems like things have been pretty kind of crazy over there lately.
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely, this level of divide between the different states in Australia and how the governments are operating with the different restrictions around everything that's happening at the moment. And so in the state I'm in, it's kind of been the best state of Australia to live really through all of this. And we've seen like literally, I think it's between 40 to 60,000 people relocate from other areas of Australia to the state that I live in, just because the level of restrictions and guidelines and divide that's happening in different areas, has really been limiting people in their ability to be able to see family and friends, how they run their business. And I guess just not really knowing what's next, because there hasn't really been, there's been transparent plans, but then plans have also changed at a drop of a hat sometimes, depending on what state you're living in as well.
That's really unfortunate. Does it seem like things are starting to ease up, or is it kind of more of the same?
Yeah, 100%. Things are starting to ease up. And what we're finding is everything, most states bar one, they're opening everything up. The state I live in, pretty much all rules are going to be gone by the end of this month, which is really, really good. And we're starting to see this recovery in the economy, and confidence is starting to come back, which is great. And lots of businesses that were closed are starting to reopen. So I think that's all really good. I think that there just seems to be one thing after the other. And I think there's this undercurrent when I talk to people about, their mental health as a business owner, entrepreneur. Definitely, it's like people are getting back out there, but there's this real sense that people are like, they can't handle anymore. Like, I would say that that sentiment is like everywhere I go. People are definitely feeling like, what's next?
Right, they're almost to a breaking point or something like that. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's good to hear that maybe things are kind of getting back to, somewhat normalcy. I know, your guys' thought, we've had you in our thoughts and prayers for sure. Some of the stuff we've heard about Australia, and I don't know, what's true and what's not, but it's,
Mm.
what I've heard is it seems rather unfortunate. So I'm glad that it sounds like things are easing up for you guys, and it's great. It's
Yeah.
great. So it's exciting to have you on. I love entrepreneurship. I love, I've actually have a little bit of experience at that myself, and I actually spent quite a few years working for a successful entrepreneur. So I kind of got, an inside track, an inside look on how to run a business and how to start a business. So this is exciting stuff for me. But the reason that I wanted to have you on is because of how you view things. I think it's so different, but it's probably important in a lot of ways, and maybe impactful in a lot of ways. So I do want to dive into that. But maybe for the listeners, just to kind of understand who you are, I always usually like to start off with a question like this. Kind of what is your background and what got you started in entrepreneurship? And you're so young still, but you're very successful at what you do. So
Thank you. Yeah. So my background is when I was 18, I got given a mental health diagnosis of bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. And when I was given that diagnosis, I just got in the top 6% of results in Australia with my HSC, and things were going really well. And this kind of happened, and it made me question a lot of my life path from there. And after 12 months of being on the medication and kind of feeling like a sense of a lack of direction and not really being able to work more than 3 days a week because I was really knocked out by these medication I was on, my dad threw me a book and he said, you know what, like, here's a desk, take on our family's property development. It's not really working, you know, give it a crack. You're great at economics and business studies. And I was like, oh, and at that point, I mean, I couldn't, like, I went from like high performing, incredibly intelligent to like in 12 months couldn't really even function because of this medication they put me on. And so at that point, I was like, okay, no worries. And you know, I took on that family property development company, grew it by 1600%. And that got me into property development when I saw this group of people. And I came up with this idea that I wanted to give this community a sense of belonging and create a property development company that stood for a purpose greater than me. And so that was, I guess, the first part of my 11-year journey as an entrepreneur. And what enables me to have this different approach to entrepreneurship today is that the first 7 years of my entrepreneurial career were very much about trying to prove myself, not feeling really good enough inside, driven by an immense level of inadequacy, feeling like a shit person, feeling like I had something to prove the world to be good enough. And I thought that only when I become like this successful man or successful woman, you know, in my case, successful woman, that, okay, now I am going to feel enough. And I think that ultimately there is that hole in our heart that as entrepreneurs, we maybe are unconsciously trying to get filled through an empire, through a business, or for some of us, it's through a relationship. And so it was after 7 years growing this multi-million-dollar company that I was like, wait a second, I won this award. And I was like, wait a second, I've become a award-winning entrepreneur. I've got everything that I thought would make me happy. And I remember going back home after that award ceremony, crying, going, shit, I still feel the same. I still feel empty. I still feel like I'm a fuck up. And so then I realized that like what I'm really seeking is inside of me. And that only when I learn how to fill up that hole in my heart on my own love, and then allow for my business or relationship to just be an expression of that love and wholeness I found within, only will I ever really be happy. And I talk about that, you know, entrepreneurship ultimately needs to be built on the foundation of being both content and at peace with who we are, our flaws and our greatness, alongside feeling appreciative of this part inside of all of our hearts that wants more, that has a desire, I want to be more, that we're constantly going to have this voice inside that nothing will ever be good enough for that part. And that's the part that we also must maintain a connection to, because ultimately that's what's calling us into our potential. But if we're being caught into our potential and we want more, without that sense of being at peace with we are actually enough right here, then we just keep constantly get caught in this vicious cycle of like, need to be more, never be enough. And that's where, you know, that inadequacy and lack of fulfillment is driven from then.
That's interesting. You know, based on my experience, I'd mentioned off air that I'd worked with an entrepreneur for a few years, and it seemed that he was similar to that he just always wanted more. Now, I think, like you had mentioned, that is an important aspect to have to motivate you to try to, you know, build something bigger or make it a better, you know, company, or, you know, but at the same time, that's interesting that, you know, you've got to kind of work on yourself a lot too, right?
Oh, yeah.
To try to be, I guess, balanced or more successful. And what were some of the things that maybe, you know, you've done how did you gain that wholeness and understanding?
The biggest practice was in discovering that I had a masculine and a feminine energy inside of me, and that they both have very different needs. So there is this masculine part of me that is driven and focused and wants to keep going. I'm a highly driven person. But what was really missing is that connection to my feminine energy. And actually, she deeply wants to rest, to have nothing to prove, to just be, to have fun, to play, to just, you know, nourish, to connect with people. And so what I found is I was out of balance with myself. And so as I've been able to go inside of myself and really deeply create a deeper connection with both my masculine and feminine, now I'm able to understand what both of their needs are. And that's where the fulfillment came, because that entrepreneurial career at the start of my journey was just meeting my masculine needs. And I wondered, why didn't I feel fulfilled? And it was because I actually wasn't in touch with half of who I was, which is my femininity. And whether you're a man or a woman, that'll be the same for you. It's like some men who sacrifice relationships and intimacy for their career, only to at 40 or 50 go, shit, I'm missing something. And it's that they've got a feminine part of them that just wants to, just to receive the love from a woman. So it's different for all of us, but that's been the key, is that deep connection to what's my masculine needs over the course of my life and what are my feminine needs over the course of my life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, as you mentioned, fulfilling these needs of masculine, feminine, and having that balance, I think it's important too, because, it being an entrepreneur can be a scary thing and an unsure thing at times, right? I mean, you're kind of putting yourself out there. And a lot of times some of these people are maybe invest in their entire life savings or put, basically everything's on the line financially to make this happen. And there's a lot of pressure there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I find is that for most of my entrepreneurial career, like stress, um, and that adrenaline rush was the thing that drove me. In fact, like I grew up on a family farm. I saw my mum and dad year by year go through stress, droughts. There was so much uncertainty and chaos. And I think that at the start of our entrepreneurial career, we think that's the norm, and we're just, and we love it. We often love it as entrepreneurs, but I began to discover that that doesn't have to be the norm. It doesn't actually. And that level of stability is first built inside of us. Something I talk about, our empire is built from within. So as we become more stable emotionally within ourselves, within our identity, within that clarity and capacity to be able to meet our needs, our empire will reflect that level of stability too, through our income, and even just the sabotage, that can sometimes, we create up and down income. We create storms and shit storms because we just want to be needed by our empire. Oh, I love this. I feed off, and it's like the scariest prospect for often a lot of entrepreneurs is if they become redundant to their own business. But that's actually the epitome of success. Create a business that doesn't need you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, I mean, in so many words, you're basically saying it's kind of your business is technically maybe even a reflection of how you are internally.
It is, I believe it, like I 100% believe it is, and like it's just a reflection, just a mirror. I often think that there's two paths people go down. They either go down the relationship path where their partner becomes a conscious mirror, or there's entrepreneurs who, really use their business as that mirror. And I don't believe that our business will ever outgrow our state of consciousness. And so, yeah, it's really cool when you start taking that spiritual approach in that way.
Yeah, that is cool. So, in your life experiences, perhaps you've come across some people that have helped influence you or push you or kind of lead you in the direction that you're currently on. Are there some people that you can kind of, you know, put a finger on and say this person was, instrumental in my development or my pursuit of my career?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say as a little girl, it was my father. He used to take me to all of the business meetings that he went to. And I was like the one there. And I always wanted to give him, put in my word and that type of thing. So that definitely was my dad was an early role model. From there, I would say I went and met Jack DeLosa at the Entourage. He owns one of Australia's largest entrepreneurial businesses. And when I was there, I remember seeing him on stage and going on to read his books. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, I've never met somebody who has the same language and has the same understanding of like how I see entrepreneurship can shift and reimagine the world. And then I went and worked and trained with him, and he's been a massive influence for me. And then later on, it's been my mentor at the moment, Jason Irving. He's got the Wellness Breakthrough Leadership Academy, and it's without a shadow of a doubt the most integral based leadership academy I have seen in the world. No one really knows about them, but he's phenomenal. his work and how it's transformed me. He's been one of the biggest inspirations about how I've come to understand that our empires are built from the inside out. And he's got an incredible training facility, which is all about being a humanitarian leader. How do we think like the Nelson Mandelas in the world? So that's inspiring me, and I'm in year 2 of his 3-year leadership academy at the moment.
I got to get back to that point here in a second. That's good. Did you work with I thought I read somewhere that you worked with a shamanist, or you use shamanistic practices in your work? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, 100%. So, when I took over my family's property development company, I started to work with a shaman then. He kind of came into my life, saved my life, and he started to help me to understand, I guess, how my shadow would come up in business meetings and in partnerships. And what actually then happened is when I had this kind of moment where I was like, I think that there's something more for me that's more authentic to who I really am. I wanted to start to see and explore what shamanism was for me in my life path. And so I went over to Germany and trained with the world's most renowned energy medicine school there, Dr. Alberto Villoldo. He's got the world's most renowned shamanic school. And yeah, it was really interesting for me going to train and learn about shamanism, because it was a way of operating and seeing with the world that deep inside I'd always known about or felt, but had never had the language or teachings to be able to explain. So, from a young age, I felt like I was different. I'm very sensitive. I have all these gifts that were kind of judged and laughed about constantly from when I was a young girl. I could hear people's thoughts to some degree. I can feel emotions. I'm very sensitive. And so I was able to then go to this training school, and it was 300 hours over 30 days. And then I learned how to refine all my gifts. And so now I can sit on a Zoom call like this, and, I'll sit there and straight away, obviously only when I have somebody's permission do I tune in, but, straight away I can see their belief patterns, the ancestral patterns, the karma that's pulling them back, their highest potential, and you can track all these things for entrepreneurs, which is amazing because, often people don't have that level of sight for the future and what's possible for them. So I try to bring an awareness to that for them, and I'll see things happening before they're about to happen. And then, the entrepreneurs don't have to go through all the shithole because I'm like, hey, just letting you know, this is playing out for you and this is going to happen if you keep going down that path. And they're like, oh, and it's just amazing because then you can clear things. And you clear things, and rather than focusing on the external strategy to create 50K, I help to, well, here's the meditation to do to rewire your internal. And then people have got a 15K client in a week. They've done nothing different externally. It's just what they're ultimately believing inside, and their energy they're projecting out has changed. And that's what shamanism's really taught me about.
That's really cool. That's tapping into the universe and the quantum field right there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty neat approach you're taking to entrepreneurship. And that's why you're here on the show. I love it. So you talk about how you're sensitive and that, you're able to pick up on things. Do you think that perhaps that's where your maybe a lot of the sense of your wisdom comes from? Because you seem so wise and so knowledgeable beyond your years. It's pretty impressive. Almost like, I don't know if you ever heard the term like old soul, or like that's kind of how you seem to me. Like you're just, it's like I don't know, it's like you lived, you've already lived 100-year life, but you're so young, you have such a great understanding of things, it seems.
Thank you. Yeah, it was one of the sources of the most pain I've had as a little girl. But feeling like I'm a million inside, and yet I'm working with this human body that doesn't ever really feel like me. So I definitely believe that it's my sensitivity and my childhood that I went through, never feeling safe in the home, that really caused me to live constantly outside of my body. And it was through living outside of my body so much through my entire childhood that I learned I was constantly feeling into other people and sensing. And then this sensitive nature got developed, which a lot of people, that's how it gets developed, through trauma. And so it's 100%, it's my greatest gift. And it, for anybody else who's got that gift too, if you can refine it, Like that's what Jason's really good at. If you can refine it, then it won't be a curse. This used to be such a curse for me, but it's no longer a curse because I've learned how to turn it on and off. I've learned how to not be overwhelmed by my environments. And I deeply believe that this is what makes visionaries innovators. You know, throughout my life, I've actually looked back in history, and I looked at all the people that have had like all these different disorders and even went into like these melancholic states. And they were on the precipice of like going into that void, you know, going into the deep void of the collective unconscious, and had an ability to be able to go into that darkness within themselves and humanity and to bring the light and the wisdom outside. And so if you're somebody who gets initiated like that, it's genuinely because you are, you know, you might go through dark nights of the soul. You might feel like, fuck, my life keeps falling apart. It's genuinely like you need somebody. That's what the shamans have shown me. I needed shamans to help me to go in there and out. But what often happens is if you don't have that guy, you'll end up where I ended up, which was suicide. Literally was about to end my life because I was going through a shamanic initiation into being a healer, a visionary, a seer, but no one was showing me how to move through it. And that's what's missing in the rite of passages for young women and young men today, because we naturally go there between 13 to our early 20s through our sexual awakening, but nobody's guiding us through that rite of passage today. And so what's become the consequence is drugs, sex, alcohol addictions. But because we haven't learned how to cope with that initiation we're having spiritually for humanity at the moment. Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff. Now, did you know, I know you've mentioned this, so obviously it's important. You've talked about it a couple of times, but I just want you to, maybe for the listeners to understand, or anybody who's thinking about getting into starting a business, or any entrepreneurs out there, how important is it to build something that's greater than yourself, to like have this focus or this understanding that, like, you're like, because for example, you're not just building something that's like just a business. You're building something that's more important, that's even, you know, larger than business, something that's helping humanity, or helping something in a positive way.
Yeah, I think that it's like, I really don't believe that you can be successful today without it, because the ego is so strong that unless you make it not about you, then like your ego will just take over that success. You'll become a dickhead. So we need something that's going to balance us, like, so
Yes.
we don't become dickheads. Because like I've been there and became a dickhead. And so I believe that in order for us to remain humble and to actually allow us to have more wealth and more success, is we need to make it about something else, like put all the attention and focus on something else. You can be the brand, but it needs to be more about your people. Because if you're somebody that's like lacking a level of inspiration, it just means that like you don't have a big enough why. When the why is big enough, it will, like, you'll just feel energized. You just jump out of bed every single day, and there will be no having to motivate yourself, because you've found a level of passion and a level of connection to want to help people in a way that's bigger than you. So if you actually want to be successful and be the happiest, most fulfilled version of you, make it about something greater than you. Because otherwise, I promise you, you're going to either end up a dickhead or end up like not fulfilled along that journey.
Oh, that's so true. And it's almost as if, you know, for you, maybe giving the love to others, or trying to help others, the universe kind of in return gives it back to you, right? It just
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Maybe can you maybe give the listeners an overview of some of your written work and talk about your books?
Yeah, 100%. So my first book, Stand Up, Speak Up, is all about imposter syndrome. So one of the biggest things that I find that holds a lot of entrepreneurs back is this idea of imposter syndrome, and that they need to be somebody perfect in order to be able to have whatever it is that they want in life, whether it's perfect relationship, perfect business. And so they're waiting for themselves to get into this perfect state before they can do the thing. And what I talk about here is that they're like that perfect time or that perfect state, it actually never comes. And so how you want to start to think about imposter syndrome is that it's going to be with you for life. that imposter syndrome is just a scared little girl or scared little boy inside that actually has different needs. And if you start to have a conversation with that part of yourself and bring him or her along for the journey, then your adult part of you will start to give it what it needs. And the consequence of that is then the self-belief, self-trust to take action and step out of your comfort zone and be okay with the uncertainty of, I don't know if it's going to work, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But most people go, I don't trust myself. And then because I don't trust myself, I'm going to keep being where I am. And then when I stay where I am, I'm sure trust will be built. But trust won't be built that way. So trust is only built when we choose to step out of the comfort zone with courage, and then we see what's inside of ourselves. But before we can do that, we have to first turn around, look to where we've broken our trust with ourselves, where we've said we'll do something and we didn't follow through, where we were out of integrity, where we really fucked up. And to make peace with that, to forgive that part of ourselves, and then say, what do we need? What do you need from me so we can move forward and try to create new evidence of something different? Great, I'm going to listen to you. And then what we've got to do is we've got to look to the future, and we've got to say, well, what am I going to be like? What am I going to do different? What's going to be the values that are going to underpin my behaviors moving forward? And am I okay with, not getting it right as I go along that journey? So yeah, that's very much my book on imposter syndrome.
That's interesting, and it's almost as if you're having a conversation with your inner child, or you're trying to fix. And I've heard that. I've heard people refer to that before, to like more of like medical issues to help others heal. That's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, one of the things is I've got a lot of clients who have previously done NLP, and what they find really different about my work is like they don't need to be something different. So that book, it is all about the inner child, but it's very different because it's like, unless we accept ourselves as we are, can we change? So most people go, oh God, I've got to be something more. I've got to be something different. I want to get rid of all the beliefs. Whereas I don't work in that way. I'm like, I would never want to get rid of the part of you that feels like it's not enough, because that part of you is going to keep you humble. So that's what true healing is, like relating to them parts in new ways, but keeping them all as part of us by honoring them, accepting them, and acknowledging their normal patterns, and then having that conscious awareness to accept them whilst also creating space to respond to their usual patterns in a new way. And that's where that, all sabotage is ultimately rooted, in that part of us that doesn't want more money, that creates them up and down incomes, that pushes away opportunities, that says, oh no, I want a podcast, and then ghosts everybody. Or, I don't know what it is. Like, that part of us that's like, no, I want this. No, I don't. It's like that part of us that says, no, I don't, is that this is what this book's actually all about, is because really what we're more scared of than our darkness is just how great we are, of just how capable we are. And this is the biggest lie, is being capable of anything is not about you getting it perfect all the time. It's about you revealing your humanness to people and actually leading from that place. And then that's the antidote to imposter. So you don't try to pedestal yourself as a leader. I'm Miss Perfect, or it's actually the antidote to imposter is being more vulnerable, letting your fears and insecurities be seen by your audience, and just showing up as the imperfect version of you.
Wow, that's intense. That's very wise. Can you maybe give the listeners a real world experience of, maybe something that was impressive that you maybe helped another entrepreneur, or even yourself, like that you overcome maybe extreme odds, and it just was, based on like, your current modalities that you're using to kind of be successful?
Yeah. So I just finished leading a 2-year divine feminine leadership training, and took over 30 women through that. And some of the things that came out of that was, within 6 months, like a woman tripling her business. She went from hating social media, just hating the responsibility of a business. She was a real gypsy nomad. And and I taught her that true freedom is the byproduct of responsibility and discipline. And then she grew her business to 3, 4, tripled it in size. She was on weed every day for 4 years before us working together. Now she doesn't smoke weed. um, Another client, Peter, he has got this massive vision of a holistic health center, and we work together. And within 6 weeks, he times his prices by 5 and went from $200 sessions to, I think it was in 2 weeks, he sold his first 15K package. And so really what's underneath all of that is like, I help people accept them as they are, and then I show them their greatness. And then I say, so if we package that greatness up, that's a 15K package. Whoa, and then that increased value internally, they start believing too. And so now he's going to have 20 people in this. He'll have a $500,000 business or something this year. And he's working less than ever before. He's gone from 6 days a week to now 2 days a week in 6 weeks. And now he's selling 15K packages when he was doing $200 sessions.
That's impressive.
Just a change in his perception of himself. I'm like, hey, I see your greatness over here. And he's seeing himself smaller. And I'm like, well, if we just do a change in perception, he's doing the same thing, helping the same clients, just a change in perception is all.
Wow.
Yeah.
For a young, hungry entrepreneur, what are a few things that maybe you could say to them, maybe to help them to start building this strong inner self, or this inner person that's going to be maybe eventually a reflection of their business?
I would say the number one first thing is like, stop seeking permission from others and their approval, and learn how to back yourself. That your desires are actually a gift from God or spirit or whatever you want to talk. It's actually, that desire is a gift. And you don't need to wait for others to get it, to understand it, to validate it for you. Just know that if it is a desire, you have that desire because you actually have everything within yourself to make it happen. Even though your fears and doubts and stuff will come up. Okay. And so then once you know that, the second part is make sure you're around the right community, because the biggest thing that's limited me, and I've seen limit others, is the wrong environment. Listening to other people's rules, fears, family, friends, partners, all that. So you want to make sure that you're in an environment where people are either where you want to be or are going in the same direction as you.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Even for people that aren't entrepreneurs, just people that are in general, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of in the thought of this, but I want to ask someone such as yourself, because you're an expert in this. I mean, it takes a certain type of person or personality type to be a thriving entrepreneur, no?
Oh yeah. I don't believe everybody's born to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. I meet people and I see people and I'm like, genuinely, with what I see in their makeup, I'm like, it would be better for them to work for somebody. Like, and not in any, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing that's better or worse, but I genuinely believe not everybody's made to be an entrepreneur, because you have to lead yourself. You're only accountable to yourself. All the responsibilities on your shoulders. Like, you can never delegate that, even if you try. At the end of the day, the buck ends with you. And so you've got to be somebody who's incredibly resilient. I did this talk once where I said, the best entrepreneurs are often those who have had mental illness or adversity, because it's the number one key to a great entrepreneur is the ability to just get up. Every day you're going to be knocked down. So if you're somebody who's been through immense level of addictions, adversity, you are actually primed to be the best type of entrepreneur there is.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Total sense. You talk about, shaping the world into a better place. And I love that. Kind of what are some of the things that you're doing now to kind of make that happen?
At the moment, I've just launched my new business school, Empire B School, and the idea behind it is to ultimately to create empires that have a shared value arm. So what I've done in the past is, the property development industry that I created, we had a mental health awareness arm where I raised over $80,000 towards bipolar disorder research in Australia. And so the idea is, if you get good-hearted entrepreneurs into places of position and authority, well, then they can impact causes that are close to their own hearts to start to influence them, raise money, put some of their profits aside to those different problems in the world. So I guess the way that I'm trying to do this at the moment is I'm trying to find the right entrepreneurs, who have big visions that they want to ultimately change industries, health, meditation, spirituality, coaching. And what I'm trying to do is build their confidence up so that they are huge leaders and that they're using their voice for good in them industries, to bring integrity into some systems that are very much out of integrity at the moment.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Them are some of your future goals, obviously. What are some of your other future goals? I mean, is there any more written work in the future,
Yep.
or is there, what do you got going on?
I've got a third book coming, which is like so that's going to be done by the end of the year. And that's all about how do you build an empire that shapes a better world. And it's about the culmination of Indigenous wisdom I've learned as I've traveled the world, learning from the medicine men and women, and how do we bring that into like a capitalist society. So I'm going to be bridging that, which I'm really excited to do. And yeah, I guess I've always had this dream to write 20 books. So I'm sure there's going to be many more books that are coming. And my other things I'm working on is I'd love to go to young people, those that are between 13 to 18, and just do free talks with them all over the next 1 to 2 few years. Because there was a man that once came in and he gave me a talk at a school, and he shared about how he made really bad choices and how he broke through them. And that changed the course of my life. I went back to my parents and I said, I need to go to boarding school. I don't want to do drugs anymore. I don't want to do alcohol anymore. And I went from the darkest place to getting 6% of the top results in Australia. And so I want to go into these schools and let people know that, like, the choices that you're making here today, it took me 10 years to heal from the choices I made in my teenage years with sex and drugs and alcohol and things that happened. And I'd love to help them to be able to go through that initiation of knowing who they are, knowing their purpose, knowing how to live in accordance with their value systems, so they don't have to make some of the choices that I made, and that maybe entrepreneurship would be a vehicle for them to, often they're rebels, they're challenge the status quo, they don't like being put under control like I was. I was a rule breaker, and they're all the best archetypes of actually a successful entrepreneur. So
Yeah,
I'd love to work with them.
I think that's an important thing to have, because I mean, they're leaders, or they think for themselves. They don't just follow the rules. They think outside of the box oftentimes, and I think you're right on with that. That's an important thing, and I think that's really great that you want to help the youth, and because I think you could probably get through to some of them and change some lives, and
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Wow, you seem to be on an incredible journey. A little bit off topic, just because I want to get your take on things. And I think I may know. No, I'm not even going to say that. I'm just going to go with it. So your thoughts on the afterlife?
Ah. I did this practice once in my shamanic training where, and we unscrew the chakra system, and then we're pulled out of our body and we're floating around the room, and
Wait,
and so
you astral traveled?
yeah.
That's pretty dope.
Which is cool, like when you're not sleeping, when they do it, and then you can travel, like that was cool. And so we learn how to like help somebody pass over, and all of that. And so I guess my belief is that there is an afterlife, and that, yeah, there's, we have so many different contracts on a soul level, and some of us have the remembrance of not only past lives but future, even though time's not linear. But that's the thinking that's behind creating an empire. So I have a 500-year legacy. I want my empire to live beyond me. and I'm building it in that way. And for those that are connected on that level, they can actually build things that they know, is going to live after them in that way too.
Yeah, that's impressive. It's a good answer. I think you're on to
What
something.
about you? Do you believe in the afterlife? Or?
Absolutely. I believe in reincarnation. I believe in the afterlife. Now, before I started this podcast, I would have said no, but I've talked to too many people and I've done a lot of reading and research on things. And yeah, I absolutely think that we do have soul contracts and that we do live multiple lives. And have you ever had a past life regression done?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Have you?
Yeah. And I've also I've done many plant medicine journeys too, and
Oh
experienced
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That'll definitely take you. That'll definitely if you didn't believe in afterlife before that, you will probably after taking some of that. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So your past life, can you maybe elaborate a little bit? What happened? What if you don't feel like sharing, that's fine.
No,
But I just
I think that most of my memories come from like the Lemurian times. I have a lot of Lemurian gifts and that I tap into within this life, and being a Lemurian high priestess, and very much like my sensitive nature and the way I remember us relating then. So I have a lot of remembrance around that, and also how the masculine feminine was out of balance there. So the main timelines I'm working with is Lemuria, ancient Egypt, and Atlantis. And what I'm trying to anchor really here for humanity is the healing of them masculine and feminine polarities, of the core wounds that humanity created through their major timelines. And yeah, the biggest thing, my life has been a big dedication to sacred sexuality. And that's very much about healing the way in which women in power through ancient Egypt got things out of balance. So it's why I'm really helping a lot of women, but men as well, to have a high level of integrity around sexuality, because it's that same lust that actually is corrupting the business world and entrepreneurship. So I'm very passionate about ensuring that lust doesn't corrupt us as we get more powerful and more money.
that's deep.
Yeah.
It's deep. You mentioned Atlantis, so you believe Atlantis really existed?
Yeah, I do. Do
That's
you?
cool. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've done shows on it though. I've had people on that claim that it's existed, and I think it's a good possibility. I do.
I feel like it exists as a point of consciousness, if that makes sense. It's like a way, it's
Yeah.
like a level of consciousness, or I think time and space is more about a type of perception. It's like this reality we're living in now is it's just a level of perception, and we can call it anything. But I see Lemuria as a state of perception, Atlantis, same with Egypt. They're like levels of consciousness we could choose to live in or out of, no matter any time. Yeah.
So cool. Yep. I'm with you. Listen, it's been a fascinating discussion. You're definitely wise beyond your years. Where can listeners find you and check the work out you're doing and get a hold of your book?
Yeah, so if you head to Amazon, then you can get a copy of my book, Stand Up, Speak Up, Build Your Empire from the Inside Out. I have a free Facebook community, Build Your Empire from the Inside Out. I'm constantly going in there live, trying to just connect with you guys. I've got my own podcast, the Business Empress podcast with Samantha J. Follow me on Instagram, i.m.samantha.j. And yeah, reach out. I have a free lots of different quantum meditations to grow and scale your business, and would love to connect with everybody.
That's awesome. And when the new book comes out, get a hold of me. We'll have you back on the show.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for today.
Yeah. Thank you. It's brilliant. Take care.